Okay, so we're going to get started today with exercise 208, and this is kind of the place where you guys start to do stuff on your own. And thus far, everything that I've given you has been very scripted, step by step. Do this, and then do that, and then do this, and use this tool, etc. But at a certain point, I have to start you guys thinking, how am I going to model something? Because ultimately, we're going to get to, I have a design in my head, and I have to be able to figure out how to make it and what to do to create it. And so we need kind of baby steps in getting that direction. So what we're going to do today is we're going to base our work on something that we find online. And what I'm going to ask you to do is pick something. I'm calling this generically a building component, but something that would end up in a building. It needs to be something that you're not designing. You're not just coming up with it out of thin air. It's something that exists in the real world such that you could go to a store and buy it, or you could find it on Amazon or whatever. The point is that it's not something that it's not like a vase or something. It's like it's a building part, like a window or a door or a table or something like that. But it needs to exist. So it's not, you can't use your assignment 201 table and chair as your components because they're yours, not somebody else's. So it needs to be an existing object. And the reason that I'm being that specific is it will give you some kind of a guide as to what you're coming up with. And so I'm going to do an example today as a window, though I will probably also do like a cabinet door, which is a little bit harder and easier, and it depends on how you look at it. So the windows, I went to Pella, which is a window manufacturer. You could go to Milgard, you could go to Geldwin. I mean, there's a bunch of different window manufacturers. It doesn't matter which one you pick. I'm picking this one because I know that their website has what I'm looking for on it. If I go to Pella.com, up here, and this is kind of one of the keys when you're doing this, and you'll learn as you go forward, let's say you take the working drawings class or something like that, when you're looking for specifics about products that exist, generally websites are made for consumers to just, oh, that's a pretty picture, I kind of like it, and they tell their architect that's what you want. If you're the architect, however, there's generally a link for the professional, right? And it could be architects, it could be contractors, something like that, and it takes you to their kind of professional website. And so this is, when I click on that link, it's taking me to the Pella professional website. And from here, I'm going to go to Windows, and I'm going to pick a fiberglass window. Again, I don't know why I'm picking this, and I'll pick a double hung window. Doesn't matter, right? The point is I'm picking something. And on the Pella website, they're great because it's not hard to find what I'm looking for. We could see that I have a couple specifications and downloads here. I have a 2D cross-section. I have a 2D elevation. I have a Revit file. We're not doing Revit in this class, so no luck for you. And then I have a specifications file. Now, some websites actually have, like if you go to Kohler and you pick a toilet, they actually have a 3D model of the toilet, right? It's not fair for you to just pick the 3D model and call it a day. Okay? The point today is that you have to actually make something. Okay? So we're going to go from a 2D drawing rather than a 3D model. Right? Recognize, of course, that when you get further down the road, if you want a toilet and you go to Kohler and you download the 3D model, great. Right? There's nothing wrong with it. But today it's about building, so we're going to concentrate on building. So I'm going to download this 2D elevation AutoCAD file. And it turns out I already did here. If I were to just open it in AutoCAD, right, we just take a quick preview of what it looks like. You don't have to open it in AutoCAD. It's not an AutoCAD class. You need to know nothing about AutoCAD. Okay? But it comes up, and I see all of their various size windows, and I can see, oh, okay, well, they have it all kind of specified for me in this big grid of what windows are available. I'm going to use these as a guide to work in Rhino. Okay? So, no, I don't need to save that. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I save this on my flash drive. So there it is. Let me copy it, and let me put it on my flash drive here into today's folder, 208, and we'll paste it so that it's there. Okay? Now, one of the other files that's available is the 2D cross-section, right, which I can download. Now, in all reality, this is probably too much information, but if we were technically building this, and we wanted to spend a lot of time, we might study what the cross-sections look like. So here's, for example, the cross-section of how the glass comes together and how these various pieces. Now, I'm not expecting you to build it in this much detail by any means. But there is some information that's actually kind of interesting that's here, that has to do with how the various glass pieces are held and how the window comes together. So you do not need to use these sections as your guide for how this comes together. We're going to make a simplified version of the window. But if you're really struggling to understand kind of the details, sometimes it's worth downloading it just to look at how these products really work. But again, that's probably overkill. Okay? So I have the elevation file. It's an AutoCAD DWG file. I clicked. It's almost impossible to see, but it says DWG right there. And that's the one that I clicked. Okay? But again, if we picked a different company, it might look slightly different, but they're generally available on the professional version of these websites. So now that I have that file downloaded, I'm going to go ahead and open up Rhino. So let me go to Start, and then we'll open up Rhino. And I'll pick the large object inches template, which is what I always pick. And we'll let Rhino open up here. Okay, perfect. So Rhino's open. I've confirmed that my units are in inches, which is important. Generally speaking, the files that you download will have units of inches. Sometimes they won't be, in which case we'll have to do some scaling. But if we stick with inches, there's a pretty good chance that they'll match up. So from here, I'm going to go to the File menu, and then I'm going to go to Import. And I'm going to browse on my flash drive for that AutoCAD file. So it was in exercise 208. There it is. It's possible that in your version, you have to actually specify either all compatible files or DWGs. Probably says AutoCAD DWG there. Because sometimes you're limited to just 3D Studio or Rhino files. It wouldn't be a 3D Studio. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the point is, make sure it's all compatible files, and then I can actually pick the AutoCAD drawing. When I click Open, it'll bring in this DWG/DXF import options, right? And I could go through and I could read all of these, and I could check various boxes. I'm just going to go ahead and say OK. Right? And lo and behold, if I look in the top view, all of those windows just came in. Okay? I also have a bunch of layers that came in, which is one of the annoying things about bringing in somebody else's AutoCAD file, is you end up with lots of extra layers. Okay? Some of these layers probably have block references attached, so getting rid of them is long-term going to be a little bit annoying. But we're going to just go with it for right now. In the interest of clarity, I'm going to create a master layer, and I'll call this AutoCAD. And then I'm going to take all this stuff that AutoCAD brought in, and I'm going to dump it into an AutoCAD layer that I can then turn on and turn off, right? Such that I can control all of the AutoCAD stuff at once. Okay, it just makes my life, my sanity, a little bit easier. Okay, so now let's take a look at these windows. And I'm going to pick some size window to do. So let's see here. I can look at the general sizes. These are listed as widths followed by heights. So 2.8, 2.6 would be 2'8" wide by 2'6" tall. That's just information to be aware of. Over here, right, we keep going up, and we got various. These are the 5.0s, right? So they're 5 feet tall. That's nice. A 3.050 right here is generally a pretty generic, normal-sized window. So I'm going to work with that 3.050, this one right there. Okay? Again, pick any window you want. It doesn't matter which one you pick. Okay? So that's the one I want to work with. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm just going to type move, and I'm going to move these outside of everything else so that I have it. And then I'll take everything else, and I'll just get rid of it. Right? I don't really need it. And then let's take this one 3.050 window, and let's put it back at 0.0, 0. And zoom, selected, and there it is. Okay, so I'm just trying to kind of clarify life a little bit as I go forward. So if I were to look at this in 3D, we can see that they've established some different layers that will help me kind of guide through this. It looks like they're all kind of grouped together. So I'm going to go ahead and explode it so that I can start to get individual objects. So there's that, right? I've got my individual little mullions, should I want to keep them. I've got my glass panes that are established. Okay, so I'm getting there. Okay? So first thing that I want to do is I want to start thinking of this in 3 dimensions. Right? So as I look at this window, part of the window is going to come forward, part of the window is going to go back, right, as I start to work on it. So let's start with the part that comes forward, which is this upper part. Okay? So one of the challenges with this kind of a setting where you're responsible to figure out how to make it is there's different ways of making it. Right? And the way you might make it might be totally different than the way you make it. And there's nothing wrong with one way or the other. I'm going to show you some variety of techniques today to show you how I might make it. Right? But that just because I did it one way doesn't mean that's the right way. Okay? And I think it's important to emphasize that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, and I'm working on the default layer for right now, is I'm going to start with just a rectangular surface. So here it is, a rectangular plane corner to corner. And I'm going to go all the way across my object like that. And if I were to view this in shaded mode, we'd see that now I have a surface. Okay? So what I want is I want that surface to be divided up into other surfaces. So I'm going to use a command called split, right, which is going to split this surface with these curves. So it's up under, I think it's either under edit or transform. It's edit split. I tend to type split. And it's going to say select objects to split. Well, the object we want to split is the surface. And then I'll hit enter. And it says select cutting objects. So we'll start selecting some curves. So maybe that curve there, maybe that curve there. And that seems pretty reasonable. Okay? And maybe I'll pick this curve too. Okay? I'm not going to do the mullions for right now. Okay? And I'll go ahead and hit enter. And when I do that, we see that I now have little surfaces that have been cut out for me. So if I were to turn off the AutoCAD altogether, we'd see that all I have left are the individual little surfaces. Okay? And so this is going to help me as I start to create this shape. So I'm going to start with just the upper part of the window. And I'll assume for right now that I have some basic measurements. This is where if I were really trying to be accurate, I'd go back to that cross section and I'd measure how big certain things are. But I'm just going to make some approximations and it'll be good enough. Yeah.
Is this the copy of the beamer? It's the import.
This the import I actually have just turned off. I had the import on. I split it into individual little surfaces and then I turned the import off altogether. So now I just have surfaces left. So, well, dimensionally it is, but the actual pieces are not the AutoCAD pieces. They're my own pieces now. Okay, so let's take a look here. We've got an outer frame. We've got some kind of an inner frame here. And then we have another inner frame, and we have two pieces of glass. Okay? So let's start with this outer frame. Okay, the outer frame is going to be large enough to hold both the sliding panes of the window. If we say that the sliding panes of the window are 1.5 inches each, that would mean that the outer needs to be at least 3 inches, maybe a little bit more. Depends on what the window actually looks like. So let's extrude surface. If I can find it, extrude surface. Right? And now we just said that that needed to probably be 3.5 inches, something like that. I'll do 3.5 inches. And again, I'm making up some of these values. We could be more technical and go reference them, but for what we're doing today, it's fine. So I type 3.5 followed by inches, and now I end up with kind of a frame of what this window, the border of this window. Okay? So let's go ahead and let's move this piece up. So I'm going to go to my transform, move. It's going to be a vertical move, so I'm going to click on vertical or type V for vertical. And I'm going to move this piece up to the top of the window like that. Wow. Okay? So now it's floating up there in space, but I probably need to move this down, maybe a little bit of a reveal. So let me do move V again for vertical. And this time I'm going to type in maybe negative 0.25 inches so that it's down ever so slightly from the frame. It looks a little more accurate that way. Okay, so now let me go ahead and extrude this surface. So once again, I'll go to Surface, Extrude, it's under Solid, sorry, Extrude Surface Straight. Okay. Now I want to look at the options here a little bit. And one of the options here is Delete Input. Okay. Right now it's set to No, and I didn't change it last time. what happens is when I do it, I'll end up with a surface and the extrusion. Okay? And since I really don't want the extra surface sitting there, I could go back and I could delete it. But when I do the initial extrusion, so let me go back and start that again, solid, extrude surface, straight, I can choose delete input yes, which means it gets rid of the surface and leaves me with just the poly surface. A little cleaner way of modeling. Okay, so now I said that the thickness of this window is maybe 1.5 inches, so I'll do negative 1.5 inches. And I end up with a little frame that can ultimately hold my glass. Okay? So let me go ahead. I've got the piece of glass here. So let me go ahead and move this piece of glass. Move, V for vertical. And let's move that so that it's flush with the top of this. Okay? So I'm going to do this extrusion first just at the top, and then I'll move it back so that it has its little reveal. So this one, same thing. It's going to be extrude surface. And the distance will be 5/8 of an inch, but it would be negative. And I want to make sure delete input is set to yes, which it is. So it would be negative 5/8 inches. And there would be my little 5/8 of an inch piece of double pane glass. Okay? I'm approximating a little bit in sizing, but it's fine. But right now, I'm going to switch my view so we can see this. And thus far, we haven't really switched beyond solid and wireframe. If I were to switch into wireframe, it's a little bit hard to see what I'm looking at. If I'm in solid mode, or excuse me, shaded mode, obviously I can't see what's underneath. But there are some other modes that are hidden down here a little bit. Ghosted is one that I tend to use a lot because it gives us just a little bit of a see-through of what's below. Right? And so that, to me, helps out a little bit. So with ghosted mode on, I'm going to move from the midpoint right there to the midpoint of my little frame. And now I end up with that upper window, right, with a piece of glass that's kind of in between the two. Make sense so far? Okay. So now I have that part of the window made, but I don't have this lower part of the window made. And if we look at this window for a second, see how this piece that I split off has a really skinny top on it? Okay. That's not really how these windows come together. The top sash of that window needs to come up here and overlap. But when I was looking at the flat 2D drawing, I didn't get that. No surprise. So I'm going to turn on my edit points and see if I can get some points on the edge of that surface. Now, let me try points on instead. See if I can get them. No, it doesn't look like it. Let me also try untrim and see if I can get some more context back. Yeah, maybe a little bit too much back. Okay. So I need to essentially create more on this surface. I could just add to it. So let me go ahead and go to my, I'm going to use this rectangular plane 3 points, and I'll go from there to there, and I'm going to go out this direction. Okay. Now, unfortunately, right, I don't really have a good point to snap to. So before I do that, I have a couple options. One, I can move this up so that it matches up with that edge, which is probably the easiest option. Let me go to move, and we'll match that up there. And now that that's there, I can use my rectangular plane from 3 points to go 1, 2, and 3. Okay? I'll take this, and I'll take this surface, and I'm going to join them together so that they become one poly surface. There they are as one poly surface. And then we'll extrude them. Sorry, solid extrude surface, straight. There and there and there. Okay. And I'll go ahead and press enter, and we'll drop them down so that they are negative 1.5 inches as well. And there it is. Now notice that when I did the math, I gave myself a little 1/4 inch reveal there, and also on the back side underneath here. Right there. It just cleans it, makes it look a little nicer. When I texture map this sash right? I want to make sure that I select the whole thing if those two get separated. Okay, so now we need the last piece of little glass here. So let me go ahead and move this. And we'll move it up to the top piece there. And then I'm going to extrude surface. My distance, again, delete input is yes. My distance is negative 0.625 or 5/8 of an inch. And then once again, I will move this, down to the midpoint like that. Oh. And somehow I lost my upper surface there. Extrude surface. Okay, 1.5 inches. So it looks like the way it's doing it, I'm going to have to not delete the input. 1.5 inches. So it keeps getting rid of part of this. Let's see if this will go away now. Yeah, we should be good now. I'm going to switch here back into shaded mode so that I can confirm. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I had a top surface on that. It was acting weird to me. Okay, so let's go ahead and move this up again. There. And then I'm going to extrude this. So same thing, extrude surface, negative 5/8. And then I have to move. See, there I am. Because I turned it off, I get doubles. There. We'll go to move. From the midpoint down to the midpoint. And now I've essentially created the bulk of what that window should look like. Okay? I could take this a step further, and I could actually add some trim around the window. Right? Because in reality, if I were to glue it on the side of a wall, it would have some trim around it. So let's go ahead and build some trim. I can do this just with the box corner-to-corner tool, or right, I can start drawing. Depends. So let's say we'll go out. Maybe we'll do 2x6 trim. So this would be 5.5 inches. Right, and we'll go till it's there. There's one piece. Go this direction, like that. Maybe I'll do a piece across the top here. And I'm just using these curves ultimately as a little guide for when I actually build the rectangles that represent the trim. Maybe we'll do like a little sill that goes on here with another little piece below it. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. There's no right or wrong thing. Okay, so then let's go ahead and do the box corner to corner. And we'll do a height of 1.5 inches. And I know it's not aligned with the top of my window just yet, but we'll get there. So let's do this. Oops, that was too far. There. 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 And maybe this one should stick out a little bit more. Maybe we'll do 2.5 inches. One more piece here. Okay, so let me take all of these pieces that I just created, and we'll move them V for vertical. Stick that even, and maybe they need to go maybe a 1/4 inch higher. So we'll go out a little bit more, 0.25 inches. And there we go. So I have a little bit of trim going around my window. Okay? And so I can take this whole thing and rotate it into the third dimensions. Now, when I'm going to ultimately place this as a block, the best place to point from would be right there, because that would be the corner of my opening in my wall. So I want that point to be on 0, 0. So let me take the whole thing. Let me go to Move. And we'll make that point at 0, comma 0, comma 0. Perfect. And then we need to rotate 3D. And I'll start at 0, 0, because I know that's my point. And I want to go out in this direction and then fold the window up in that direction. So now I have that little 3x5 window, a 3050 window, double hung, right? Detail on the back and on the front. I've got my pieces of glass. Now it's a matter of kind of cleaning this up and making it a usable block for everybody to work from or to use. Okay? So I need to organize my layers such that this is a usable thing. So thus far, everything's been on the default layer. Let's move down from the default layer to layer 1. And I'm going to call this like maybe a 3050 window. Sometimes I put the W in front, or win-3050, something like that. The reason that I try to label it is if I have lots of different size windows, I want to be able to know which block is this particular one. So there it is. We'll make a sub layer, underneath the win-3050 there. And I'll call this a W35, and then maybe 2 dashes, and then whatever it is. We'll call this trim. And I'm doing this again for clarity. So we'll add this W35, and this might be sash or frame. Let's call it frame. New sublayer. Glass. I think that's probably it. Okay. So now it's a matter of making sure these objects fall on the correct layers, and we can also get rid of a lot of these extra layers. So let's get rid of those. Okay, so let's take the trim pieces, and we'll put them on the trim layer. And I can confirm that they're on their correct layer by turning the layer off. All right, let's take these pieces that represent the frame and put them on the frame layer. Those go off. Oop, I missed that. So let's make sure it gets on the frame layer. There. And then these two are my glass, and let's change and put them on the glass layer. Okay. And lo and behold, I'm just left with those curves, which I don't need, so we can go ahead and just delete those altogether. So now I have a window 3050 with 3 sublayers that represent the pieces of my window. If I went to greater detail, and maybe I'd put the little lock on the back, or there's more that I could obviously do if I wanted to, but you guys don't need to sit and watch me do more detail. I'm going to do another thing today too. But anyway, so I have this organized. Now it's a matter of assigning the correct materials to these layers. So we'll go ahead and open my material editor. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to save. Probably a good idea. Yeah. And let's go ahead and put this in today's folder. And this is, we'll call this a Pella 3050 window. So again, I'm trying to be relatively specific about what this is. Okay? So there it is. I'll go ahead and click Save. And that's saving this. Okay? Now, I'll go and I'll apply the materials. So I'll go to V-Ray, Material Editor, and I need to load up the materials first. So let's start with glass. So I'll go here, and I'll go to my resources, V-Ray, Materials. We'll go to glass, and I'm going to use basic glass. Okay, we'll let whoever uses this adjust the settings from there, but it's just plain glass. And I'll say open, and I want basic glass to be applied to the glass layer. So let me right click and say apply material to layer, and I'll pick the glass layer. And then we need a material for the frame of the window. So let me go ahead and load material, and depending on what you're after, you can kind of decide. I'm going to go with this being kind of a white window. So I'm going to pick the black plastic and then change it to be white because I don't have it. So instead of having a diffuse color of black, I'm going to change the diffuse color to white. And now I have just kind of a white plastic window. And let's go ahead and rename this to be white. I'll say OK. and then we'll apply that to the frame. There. And then we'll load up, maybe I want a wood trim. So let me go ahead and load material. And we'll go to wood. And let's do the dark oak. And we can preview it to see what it looks like. Yeah, that looks good. And we'll go ahead and apply that to layer, and this will be my trim. I'll say OK. And we can see over here that those materials have been applied, right, to my objects. So now, if I were to switch into rendered mode, we'd see that the material has been applied to the objects. And we'd see that, yes, I can see through the glass, so it's all pretty good. But remember, we talked last class about texture mapping. And my texture mapping on these trim really doesn't look right. So I need to make sure that I fix that before I save this. Okay? I'm not so worried about the plastic that I made for the white window. Right? That kind of doesn't make any difference. But I am concerned about the trim. So let's take each of these, and I'm going to have to work with them individually because they're each going to have different, right? The grain's going to run different directions. So let's take this first, and I'll go to my properties. I'll go to my texture mapping. This looks like a box, so that would be a good place to start. And we'll do a bounding box, world, it's capped, and just by doing that, it's going relatively in the right direction. Okay, much better than it was. But let's take a look at the options again. Right? Remember, we had these options where we could do 1, 1, 1, 1 is a little bit off. Let's do x equals y equals z. And now that looks much more like it should. Now, I didn't make this material, but unfortunately, the person that made it, it doesn't tile particularly well. So we'll go with it for right now, but I might want to pick a different one so that it looks a little bit better long term. Okay, so there's that. The texture mapping doesn't matter that I've changed it. Notice that the side also matches. That's how I want. So this is essentially the exact same board. It's on the other side, but I can take the texture mapping from this one and put it on that one. Okay? So I'm going to go over, select the first one. I'm going to click on Match Mapping. It's going to say select the source object, which will be that one. And now I've essentially got that one. Okay? So let's take this one. We're going to apply a box mapping to it again. It's going to be a bounding box, world, capped. Okay? Not the correct direction, but we will go x equals y equals z. But again, it matches these. So I need to adjust that. We'll take my UVW rotation and turn it 90. And now we have that going the correct direction for that piece of wood. Okay? Now, that's identical to down here. So once again, we can do our match mapping with this. And there, that works. And we can go ahead and do it with this one as well. And now we end up with all the grain going in the correct direction, which is what we were after in the first place. Okay? So it took a little bit of time to get that right. But remember, if you create these blocks and you're very careful with it, using them down the road becomes really easy. Right? This is just a matter of I can drop this in anywhere I need a 3050 window. Right? It's a very simple thing. And this is actually something I've done in practice, doing design work. Again, more on the traditional side, but when you need to populate a building with windows, if you already have the window made, it's really easy. And if you decide you want to change the trim from 2x4 to 2x6 or vice versa, you change it once on the block file and it populates back through your whole drawing, right? Which is, again, the advantage. So let's look at my layers again. I don't need all of my AutoCAD layers, so let's get rid of them. And I wanted to save this for the end because this happens, right? Where it says, wait a minute, there's a block definition that's not going to let you delete that layer. So we need to go to Edit, Blocks, Block Manager, and you see there's a bunch of block definitions that exist. These came in with our AutoCAD file. Right? So let's select them all, and I just held down Shift and selected them all, and then I'll press the Delete button. Right? And they're all gone now. I'll click Close, and I'll go ahead and see if we can't delete the layers now. And we'll probably have to say yes to all. Right? And now they're gone. Okay? So now I'm nice and clean. I have just my window, trim, frame, and glass. I'm going to save this as a 3DM file. Okay? But if somebody were to use this down the road, it would be nice if they had the materials that I used to match. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my material editor, and on each of the materials that I used, I'm going to right-click on the material and say Pack Material. It's right here. And what that does is it collects all the files that are related to this material, and it puts them in a zip file for me to use later. So I'm going to put those in the same place on my flash drive that I saved my original file. So let me go Dropbox 136 208. It's going to go right here. There's basic glass. I'll click Save. My white plastic, Pack Material. I'll click Save. My dark oak, I'll right-click, Pack Material, and click Save. So it creates a zip file that contains everything related to that material. Okay? So now I have, if we look at my flash drive, I have the Pella window. I have each of the 3 materials. The last piece of the puzzle is I need a rendering of this so that somebody knows what I'm looking at. So I'm going to really quickly create a temporary environment layer. And on that environment layer, we're going to add an infinite plane. And it looks like I don't have the toolbars, so I'm going to just type viz infinite plane so that I have that infinite plane. Again, it needs to go down. So let me move vertical. Oops. So that it's below my object. Zoom in on it there. And I need a little bit of light, because otherwise I'm not going to see it particularly well. We can see what it looks like right now. It's not too bad. I might go with it. Right? It's hard because there's so much white that's there. But I'm not going to ask you to do any reflections or anything like that. So we'll go with it for right now. The what? I could change the infinite plane to be a different material to lighten it. I can go into my V-Ray options, and I can start to make some adjustments as well. Environment, for example, I could change this to be white, or I could change it to be a very, very pale blue, for example. I'm not going to see it because I'm looking down on it. Somewhere I have this written out. It is 55, 255, 50. The what? I used the right there because if I imagine putting this in a cutout in a wall, that's where I'd want it to align to. Okay, so let's see if I can make anything better. Let me go into my V-Ray options. It's hard because I would do something more than this. Let me see if I can do a sky background here. I don't know that this is going to work, so don't do it until I test it because I'm doing this on the fly. I might need a full sun system for it to really work, but we're going to give it a shot. Yep, that was what I was afraid of. No, it didn't disappear. It just it involves more options than I've told you about yet. So. All right, so we'll scratch that idea. And we're going to go with just the basic like this, and I'll go ahead and render it out. And again, I'm not expecting the best results in the world, but we'll get something approximate. If you want better results and you want to see the glass and whatever, I'll come around and I can help you individually, but I don't want to overload you with too much stuff. So once I have the sample file, I'll make sure I save that. Along with everything else. And this was a Pella 3050 window. And I'll save that as a JPEG. Okay, so I have that saved. Now when it comes to actually posting this on the website, I'm going to go to New Post. And I'm going to do something slightly different than what we've done before. This is a Pella 3050 double hung window, right? And I'm ultimately going to put the zip package in here. But I want to make sure on the right side down here, you'll see something called Rhino blocks. Underneath that, you can specify that this is, yes, it's a Pella. And it is, in fact, a window, which is somewhere in here. I think it's under fenestration. There we go. There's a window. It's a double hung. So these categories will help you find it because on the website, if you go to Resources and you go to Rhino Blocks Library, right, you can see that there's lots and lots of things that other people have made and submitted. We'll get to light fixtures and stuff down the road, so you're not doing light fixtures today. But the point is that this stuff exists, and you're welcome to use any or all of these in your future work. Okay? So we just want to make sure that it's categorized well. Now, when I actually do the uploading, and I need to double check this, I believe that I have to zip everything together. So I'm going to go back to my flash drive, and I'm going to take the wood, the plastic, the glass, my file here. I have to hold down Control to select individually, and the Pella sample file. So those 5. And I'll right-click, and I'll say Send to Compressed or Zip Folder, which groups all of them together and makes a little zip file that I'm then going to upload. So there it is. We'll call this Pella 3050 window. And then that's what I'm going to upload to my post. Right? So we'll go ahead and upload that. And I'll click Insert into Post. And it's just going to show up as a little text link. So it's not particularly exciting. There it is, 3050 window. I could make it look a little fancier. You know, I could say download. And I could put this as a little like a bullet point or something, whatever. Right? You don't have to do that. And then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom. I do want to make sure, of course, that this is tagged correctly as exercise 208. And then I'm going to come all the way to the bottom to set my featured image. And my featured image will be that rendered view. And there it is. And we'll go ahead and set the featured image. All right, so that's there. And then I'll go ahead and publish it. Okay? So today, my expectation is that you will create some kind of an object like a window. You'll get it all oriented correctly so that it can be used. You'll clean up all the layers. You'll apply materials, V-Ray materials to it. You'll texture map anything that's necessary. Right? Then you'll save the 3DM with the materials and the sample JPEG together, and you'll make a post with that. Okay? So depending on your skill level, right, pick an object that you think is reasonable for you to do. Right? Simple window, you know, it doesn't even have to be an operable window. It could be just a fixed pane window, which is a few extrusions. So think about your skill level and then do something to match. Okay? Because this is, again, a practice, not a assignment or anything. So take your time, get something that you can actually do and achieve, and then you'll go ahead and publish that file to the course website by the end of class today. Okay? We will continue in the same vein by picking different objects as we go forward. Okay? Are there any questions? Yeah. Sorry, say that again. For the window, the one that came from the Pella site? Okay, so for the Pella site, I went to just Pella.com, and then I clicked on this For the Professional, right, which gets us away from the kind of consumer grade website into the professional website. I'll do this for a door this time, just so it's different. I clicked on doors, and we can see that there's a variety of types of doors that I could pick from. Right? Let's say that I pick the designer series. I want the sliding door. Right, there it is. And here's the specifications and downloads. This 2D elevation file right here is the one that I want. So I'll click on that. And it looks like we've got some different size examples. These look like they have to do with the height of the door, whether it's a 6'8". So maybe it's a 6'8" contemporary. I don't know. and it'll download the file. I'm going to go ahead and open this in AutoCAD really fast just to see what it looks like because I don't know if I picked the right one. Yeah, so that looks reasonable. We see the various combinations of sliding doors. This is the file that you would end up using. Okay, so that's how I went about getting that that file. Did that answer the question? Okay. If you went to a different website, let's say it was maybe Geldwin, right? Another window manufacturer. Go to products. There's your double hung window. Right, premium vinyl double hung, sure, why not? Right, let's see here. Oh, I didn't go to professional, right? Professional, here we got elevations, and we need to find where they are. So again, all this, let's see, this is a window, right? Different website, different. There's double hung. We'd have to know there's premium vinyl, and there we go. There's the elevations, and it looks like I can download that file as well. Yeah, there you go. So different way of going about it. Different website, different process, but it's essentially getting you to the same place. Okay?